Black MacGyver. MacGyver.
The losers know too much. Kill them. Good times.
Are you trying to say that you're embarrassed to be seen in an American classic?
Right, welcome everyone to episode 6 of the Comics in Motion podcast. I am Chris Phelps, and I'll pass you over to my co-host, Mr. Dave Horrocks.
Hey guys, so welcome to the Comics in Motion podcast. What we like to do here, I'm a long-time comic nerd. My co-host there, Chris, he's a long-time comic book superhero lover. That potentially sounds a bit wrong, doesn't it? But,
I was thinking that.
But what we like to do here, we like to review comic book movies, TV shows, games, and I'll come at it and with the that also sounds wrong. We like to review TV, comic book movies, and games, and basically I'll be looking at it from a perspective of that comic nerd. And Chris will be looking at it just from the media perspective, and we'll go through that and we'll discuss our thoughts on it. Yep. What we do as well, we review at the end. We'll review our scores. What we have is a system where we'll start at the highest level, which is Asgard, which is a heavenly. This is a great film. Down from that, we have slightly less. We have Atlantis. If we're kind of middle of the road on a particular media, we'll have it as a Hall of Justice. And then we're getting down into the Hell's Kitchen. And then if something's particularly bad in our opinion, we'll send it off to the Phantom Zone.
Yeah, and I think the review system's working well. Obviously, we've tweaked it over the 5 episodes so far, and going in people and understanding, especially if you're a comic book fan or any sort of Marvel superhero DC fan, you understand the scale that we're using. And at the end of last week, we tried something different where with the Kingsman, we sent it off into Asgard as a joint thing with a tweet out there, and that seemed to get received very well. So we're just going to keep going each week and tweaking it as we go. At the moment, it seems to be working, Dave, which I'm quite happy with.
Yeah, I do wonder what people looking at it on Twitter will be thinking if they've never listened to the podcast and they're like, "What are you on about? Sending Kingsman off to Asgard? What are you talking about? These guys are lunatics." So, yeah. But we like it, so we're going to carry on doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And if anyone has any sort of suggestions or tweaks, obviously get in touch with us because we're open to it. It's a learning curve each episode. So,
and we'll probably let people into a little peek behind the curtain. So we were working on some artwork this week, weren't we? And I'd sent a few proofs through to you, Chris, and I'd subconsciously kind of forgot that it was the Phantom Zone, and I sent you off the negative zone. And it wasn't until you responded to me, well, what's the negative zone? So the negative zone is kind of the Marvel equivalent.
Ah, right.
So, and actually it's quite prominent in Civil War because they send off the superheroes who don't want to sign up to the registration. They send them off to the negative zone. So I kind of completely forgotten about that and just called it the negative zone, but it's not. It's the Phantom Zone. It's DC.
Yeah, no, it's fine because I actually thought, there must be another tweak here. I've not seen the memo on this one because
no, just incompetence.
Yeah, don't be daft. But no, it's good. It's a good scale, and we'll go from there. And then, obviously, with us doing Nick Fury, I must admit, I've had a lot of fun this week finding facts out. I know I dropped it in there in the podcast, but it's literally a needle in a haystack to find fun facts, but they've been well received. And to be fair, a lot of the comic book stuff, obviously you mentioned it last week with him, I found out different things, and it's really good. It's really been interesting this week. It's more of a challenge than watching the film, which I found a struggle, as we've said. So, but me and Dave have been talking, and I am going to go back and watch it. I did say I won't watch it last week, but there's just something drawing me back in and with the response we've had off people through Twitter, through friends, family who've watched it, I'm going to have to go back because a lot of them didn't even know this film exists. It was just fantastic last week. So I really enjoyed that and all the response we got on social media from it as well.
Yeah. They're like really bad, cheap hot dogs. You know they're not good for you, and you don't particularly enjoy them, but there's something that makes you want to go for that second one.
I'll take you for that one, Dave. Brilliant. Old hot dogs. Excellent.
Yeah. So one other thing that came out in this last week, kind of big news. So we had the second Avengers Infinity War trailer drop. And I must admit, I mean, I was on board with this before anyway, but I saw that and I just can't wait. So it comes out end of April, doesn't it? Did you catch that one, Chris?
Oh, of course I did. It was absolutely. I mean, for the minute it dropped, I think it was Thursday around about 2:00 UK time, and it had something like 20,000 retweets in 5 minutes or something, and it was unbelievable. So I got straight on it and watched it, and I was totally sold. And I know you being obviously a comic book fan, there was a couple of Doctor Strange things in there that was synonymous with the comics. So especially when he was doing that brain thing, and this is all to do with, is it Thanos' army? He's got like a legion on of baddies sort of thing, and they're all being introduced in this film as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, so the Infinity, it's based on a sort of series in I think it was in the mid-90s, and it'll be interesting how closely they follow that story. I mean, there's some bits which they're plain not going to be able to follow, but particularly with some of the characters, the existing Avengers, that we know and love. What exactly goes on there is going to be interesting, but that's kind of all I'm going to say on it because I don't want to spoil anything.
No,
sorry, go on.
Oh, go on. You're right. Sorry, go on.
So I was kind of interested because I was just loving it, and so we put out a quick poll just to see what other people thought, what our followers thought, and so we had basically a 4-point poll. So we had whether it was awesome, whether it was kind of it was all right, whether there were too many spoilers in it, because there were a couple of things in there that I saw and I thought, well, maybe I'm just seeing this because I've read the comic. Would anyone else pick up on this? I genuinely wasn't sure, so I thought we'd add that in. And then I thought, well, I'm sure people are going to stay away from it as well. So like the last Star Wars, I completely stayed away from all trailers. Whereas this one, I was just sucked in. So we had on the awesome was a clear winner. So we had 65%. Kind of middle of the road was 19%. Too many spoilers was 4%. So there weren't many people who kind of were worried about that, like I thought we might be. And staying away from it, 12%.
Yeah,
so I thought it was just interesting, just to see what kind of our followers thought of that trailer as well.
I think, didn't you look at the stats though, Dave? And that 12% was David Hasselhoff because he's known as Nick Fury.
Yeah, I didn't have a fifth one, just boycotting the film.
I was the real Nick Fury, and that and going back to, I genuinely did love all this, and the whole trailer was absolutely fantastic. But I must admit, Dave, that every time I see Samuel L. Jackson now, I'm going to be on board with thinking it's always going to be the Hoff. It shouldn't be. It really shouldn't. But it's just going to be the Hoff.
You're going to pass up the steak and you're going to take the cheap hot dogs, aren't you?
Yeah.
So again, Thanos, he's going to have this Infinity Gauntlet. It's kind of, bending space and time and whatever. So who knows? We could even see the Hoff as Nick Fury, or maybe, at some point, Samuel L. Jackson rips off a Samuel L. Jackson mask and it's the Hoff underneath.
Surprise!
I would personally love it, but I'm sure the clever people at Marvel wouldn't probably go down that route.
No, I don't as well.
Oh dear.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But no, and I think as well, Dave, they were saying that the pre-sales of the tickets is already overtaken Black Panther. And obviously the Black Panther was like one of the best pre-sale films ever, wasn't it? So already Avengers, so this year they're going to have two massive hits on in Marvel Studios.
Yeah, and I kind of want to calm myself down.
Yeah.
Because it does look awesome. I thought Age of Ultron looked awesome as well, and I do enjoy that movie. I do like it, but it didn't quite live up to the hype. And so in between now and watching it, I'm just going to try and calm down a little bit and just, it'll be what it'll be, but it's very difficult.
Yeah. So, it is, to be fair. And look, at the end of the day, the Avengers, he's been one of the best films out of all the superhero ones. I think the first Avengers is up there with The Dark Knight and stuff like that sort of trilogy. But obviously that's stuff we're going to review down the line, but I'm that in anticipation, especially the Hulk. I love the Hulk anyway, so I just love when he goes crazy in these films. So I want to see what happens in like this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we get into our review for the day?
Let's go for it.
Bit of comics background. Okay, so today we're going to go through the Losers movie. So a little bit of comics background around that. So it was written by a chap called Andy Diggle, and the artist was a guy who's just known as Jock. Now, Andy Diggle, so these are both British guys, and they came through the 2000 AD route. So 2000 AD is like a sci-fi comic / magazine in the UK, and it's had a lot of talent pass through the doors. So they'll generally, if they excel at 2000 AD, they'll get picked up and paid a bit more by the American comics. And so people like these guys, Andy Diggle, Jock, but you've got the likes of Alan Moore, who wrote Watchmen. I mentioned Dave Gibbons, who's the artist for Secret Service. Mentioned him the other week, so he's passed through there. Brian Boland, very big artist. Neil Gaiman, Grant Morrison as well. So these are in the comic world. These are big names, and they've come through that 2000 AD route. And essentially, Andy Diggle was given this task to write a story for the Vertigo imprint. And so the story goes, someone sent him a message around a property of DC's, which was called The Losers. So this was a World War II comic. And he didn't go back and dig out those issues and learn all about it. What he did is he Googled and he had a look on the internet. And he'd said, like, this is a great title. I really like this, and he learned a little bit from Wikipedia and whatever, and then thought, right, I know enough now. I'll go off and write a comic about it. So I just thought that was really funny. Sometimes we get hung up about, people not doing their research and getting minor details wrong. Whereas Andy Diggle there is, he's quite happily saying, yeah, I just went on the internet, Googled it, knew enough, and then went on and blagged it from there. So Andy's written other stuff. We discussed Black Panther, didn't we, a few weeks ago, taking over as the Guardian of Hell's Kitchen from Daredevil. The prequel event to that was called Shadowland, which I think I mentioned, and Andy Diggle was the author for that. So basically getting Daredevil possessed and having it ending up with him leaving Hell's Kitchen. Jock, you'll probably know his artwork more from movie posters and things like that. So he's done things like Dark Knight Rises, Iron Man 3, X-Men Days of Future Past, stuff like that. Really beautiful work that he does there. And essentially, so this was a 32-issue run, so it's not like, a Spider-Man or a Batman running for years and years. This was a very definite story that they wanted to tell. And as I mentioned, it was done under the Vertigo imprint. So this is essentially a publishing arm of DC. So they've done lots and lots of stuff. So things like Sandman, Fables. They generally deal with the more mature audience.
Yeah.
and so Losers was released as part of that, and so Hellblazer is another one you might know, but you could know the name Constantine, which Keanu Reeves starred in. That was based on Hellblazer, but they had to change the name because Hellraiser had just come out. So yeah, that's essentially so. The movie's based on this kind of run. So it came out about 2003, and the only real trace back to that World War II comic is the title and whatever Andy Diggle learned about on Wikipedia.
Which is pretty good, to be fair.
Fair play to him as well. I will just honourable mention. So, do you watch Green Arrow at all?
Yeah.
So Andy Diggle wrote Green Arrow Year One, and so a lot of that story was taken into that first series of the TV show. And there's a character in there called Diggle.
Ah, right.
And I don't know I can't think if I've ever read confirmation of it, but it's widely speculated. This is a kind of honorary nod to Andy Diggle.
Ah,
so
right.
That character's not actually in the comics.
Ah, right. Well, the old artistic license, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose. But yeah, in the regard of the film, obviously, it came out 2010, directed by Sylvan White, and the one thing that it got a lot of things when it first got regarding the reviews, and that was it was literally out a month or a couple of months before the A-Team came out, the one with Liam Neeson. And for that reason, it did get like sort of mixed reviews on Rotten Tomatoes because they were just basically calling it a bit of a tie-in or a bit of a cash-in, for that sort of team-based commando film. That's obviously we all grew up with the A-Team and stuff, so the format. And then to be fair, when I was watching it, I did think in parts before I researched this, that this reminds me of like the A-Team in some respects. So that's obviously where this nod comes from. Yeah, so obviously the locations shown around the world are like Miami, Dubai, Mumbai, Los Angeles. Most of the principal photography was in sort of Puerto Rico and most of the filming. They did use quite a different approach to try and sort of replicate the comics, where they tried to use a free colour palette on each scene because obviously with a comic, every environment's different on each sort of chapter. Which I thought come across quite well within the film, and it does stand out. And what I was to try and depict was that they were in different locations and not just sort of generic place with different settings to make it look like they're like Nick Fury last week, where they were supposed to be in Berlin, which was obviously an American museum of some sort or whatever. So it's like that thing I thought come across really well, but obviously it got, as I said before, the mixed reviews. So people were saying like it's just a fun, dumb film, no brainer, which I can understand. And to be fair, what I don't understand with the comparisons to the A-Team is that A-Team was good, but it wasn't the sort of all singing and dancing thing that they were sort of saying against this. So I find that quite strange. But then when it comes to like the box office, it only made like 37 million worldwide, and that's across DVDs and everything. So it wasn't a critical or sort of financial success in some respects. So it was made for what it was, and I think the whole comic book adaptation of it was done in a way that was slightly different for the time, as obviously at the time we had like Iron Man and things like that, and it was all born from there. And obviously it's a different sort of comic book universe as well. Yeah,
so this was 2010, wasn't it? So a couple of years after Iron Man.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it really for the film stuff, Dave. It was all sort of done pretty quickly from the original idea. So cool. That's all I've got this week, Dave, unfortunately.
Oh, there's no unfortunately about it. So let's get into the review, shall we?
Of course.
Okay, so in my notes, and like yourself, before I'd read up some of the external reviews, so I'd watched this movie before,
yeah,
and I had my own perspective on it, and I remember thinking at the time it was a little bit A-Team, but I'd never, gone away and read up other reviews and seen all of that, critical comments from other people. But in my notes here, I've just got, we're introduced to an A-team special forces bunch. Because you can't really help it. That whole idea of the A-team, it is essentially very, very similar to the Losers, isn't it? But
yeah.
I thought one of the immediate things that jumped out to me in that first 2 minutes is how many comic book actors do you have in this scene, and how expensive would that be to do, if you shot that movie now?
Exactly. I mean, Chris Evans is a superhero god when it comes to films, isn't he? He's been in that many of them, and obviously he's Captain America, isn't he? So
yeah. So I think you've got Chris Evans, who is he was initially Johnny Storm, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Before he took on Captain America. And then you've got Jeffrey D. Morgan, who was obviously at the moment he's Negan from The Walking Dead, but before that he played the comedian in Watchmen as well.
Yeah, and
then of course you've got Zoe Saldana, who's Gamora in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then you've got Idris Elba, who's Heimdall in the kind of Thor movies. He was also the main character in the Dark Tower movie as well, which, to be honest, I haven't seen. I'm sure we'll review at some point. So you've got 4 people there who massive sort of comic book actors, and I guess the first time I'd watched it, those guys weren't quite at that stage in their career.
No, and I must admit, Dave, I think what you just said is right. It's like this was their sort of apprenticeship before they got moved on. I mean, Chris Evans has obviously been in a lot of films, and even before the Fantastic Four, he's obviously liked as this sort of superhero character. It must be something when he's acting that these directors or producers like. And
he's just a good-looking bloke. He's a good actor, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's
fundamentally a really good-looking bloke.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a tasty dish, isn't he? You can't really argue with that. So why does he get the actor? I'm sure he works very hard, but being a good-looking bugger like that, I'm sure helps.
Yeah, I think he does. Yeah. Now he's Captain America. He's always going to be typecast, isn't he? But no, it was a good start to the film, and I think at this point, because I've never seen this film again, I'd like when you watch The Kingsman, so I'm not sure what to watch, and I'm a massive A-Team fan anyway. So this sort of over-the-top action stuff was right up my street, and I wasn't sure of the tone. I didn't set the rating or anything like that, so I didn't know whether it was like an 18 or an R, you know what I mean, or whether it was a 12. I mean, it really couldn't be a 12 sort of PG, really, for what it was, but literally within the first few minutes, we're just getting bodies just going everywhere, real. And I think as well, what struck me in that first couple of scenes, Dave, was you've got this thing where the plane's going to come and they're going to take out this sort of big baddie. Is he like a drug baron or whatever he is? And
yeah, so I think and again, up until I rewatched it, I don't think I really understood what they were actually doing there.
Yeah.
So they're there to paint the target, aren't they? They're there to identify where the target is so that the planes can come in and bomb the correct place.
Yeah.
So they weren't there to do a gung-ho mission, which is kind of what I think I assumed the first time I watched it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, they end up, they like I say, they're just there to paint the target. They see, though, that there's a bunch of children there. They phone in, they say, look, bunch of kids there, you need to call this off. And then we get this mysterious voice, Max, across the airwaves, and they're basically told, we're going to have to go ahead and do this. And then they basically take it upon themselves to go and rescue the kids, don't they? And take on the drug baron and all his armed guards.
Yeah, and I must admit, I could see what was coming at this point in some respects, but it didn't detract me from the actual film. I knew it was going to go one way or the other with the children, and it did go the way I thought it would, if that makes sense. As soon as what they did was obviously they rescue the children, they get them in the bus, and Clay, Jeffrey Dean, he's like the main guy, the Hannibal Smith character, the leader of the team. He shoots this guy, he gets the kid, they go on the bus, they get away, and then we've got this scene where once they got to the helicopter, and obviously I was like you at this point, I thought they were a load of mercenaries and that. I didn't actually believe they were sort of like an army, because it was very slapdash sort of covert, tongue-in-cheek thing.
Yeah.
And as soon as the guy said as they were getting the kids on the helicopter to rescue them, sorry, we can't take you guys, I thought it's going one way or the other here. And I knew straight away, I thought this is going to end up with a helicopter getting took out, which it duly did. And it got wiped out completely with the kids on board.
Well, fair play to you, because I didn't see that at all. And I guess, when I watch these types of movies, I just strap myself in, and just go along for the ride. So I was kind of expecting they'd done that little, done the good thing and done their good little deed there. They'll have a bit of conflict, after that. But I didn't expect them to basically missile a helicopter full of kids.
Well, that was always because I was saying to you, because I got into it blind in some respects. I didn't know what to expect, and I thought, well, it's going to be, if this goes down the 18 route, they're going to be,
the helicopter full of kids will fly away. They'll build some machine that shoots cabbages. And escape some contraption, powered by potato peelings or something like that. That would be the A-team route, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. But that's what I thought was really good, because I thought, aye, this is a powerful film. This is a rated R 18 film in the UK. And then I was on board then, Dave, and I thought the panning bit of when they realised that they were going to have to die as such, and then you've got like obviously the intro comes on the losers, like the cartoon and stuff, cartoon sort of thing. I thought it was really good, and I was on board with it then. I thought, all right, yeah, this is going to be something a bit different. But I must admit, Dave, I'll hold my hands up, the next scene was very reminiscent of the start of the 18, because you've got a guy fixing a car, and I mean, they're working in a doll factory like Chris Evans and stuff, and the sniper guy. But it was like the start of the 18 when with the one with Liam Neeson, and I'm thinking, there's something going on here. Someone's given somebody a script, and that's only at the start. I felt like that. The rest of the film, I didn't. It stuck with me the way they were, because obviously they're trying to get back to the US, then, aren't they?
Yeah. So obviously they sort of throw their dog tags in, don't they? So. Pretending that they're dead. I must admit, I haven't seen the 18, that remake. I'm sure at some point I will, but so I didn't get the same kind of feelings to draw that comparison. But yeah, so they're obviously then trapped in Bolivia. They're clearly they're no longer part of the army. They're trying to make money through betting on cockfighting, and basically, we get Clay, don't we? Who's the luckiest bloke on the planet, just sat there drinking himself into a stupor at the bar, and Zoe Saldana rocks up and says, what do you fancy doing? So, old Jeffrey D. Morgan must feel like a lucky bloke at that point.
well, I must admit, at this point, I put this in my notes, I struggled with what was the reasoning behind why she was there. Obviously, she's sort of saying, well, it comes out why she needs them, sort of thing, and you can get out of the country and I'll make you get Max, because they've been introduced to this voice who's destroyed the helicopter. But there wasn't really a logical explanation why this transpired. And it's a great scene, because obviously Clay, he gets in there with her, goes to his room, and then what I don't understand is if she's trying to coerce them into sort of joining him, why she would then try and kick 10 bells out of him and then literally try and stab him. You know what I mean? It didn't
set the place on fire.
Yeah, it didn't make sense for us just to attack him, and I couldn't work out. Obviously, it's to show that she's not someone to be messed with.
She can handle herself.
Yeah, I get the scene. And it was obviously like, it was like a will they, won't they scene. Are they going to kiss? Are they going to, and you get it. And it was a great scene. And it was real like, was comic book action and that.
Stylish, wasn't it?
But why you would then try and she didn't have a mark on her face when they come out of the room because, like you said, the room gets on fire. And I'm thinking, she's like, they get to a sort of stalemate. I can help you. And I'm like, I don't. He's like, oh, I'm listening. And I'm thinking, I just didn't make any sense for me at that point. It was a great scene, but it didn't logically flow into why they would.
I'm with you there. It just was a bit strange, but I just kind of gone with it. But we get to understand from the other guys, don't we? Because there's a bit of pessimism there, or a bit of skepticism, and Clay seems to have a thing for psychotic women, so they're all a little bit skeptical about the whole plan. But she does actually sort of come through for them, doesn't she? And she manages to smuggle them back into the US. Yeah,
so she gets them onto US soil, and they're in. She goes into a sort of warehouse, and they're in coffins, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So she comes along, takes out a knife, opens all the coffins, which is pretty obvious it's them, and they're sort of back in the US. And then we end up with a scene which I thought was quite bizarre, and it's very much a Reservoir Dogs walking scene where she throws the pass away, like she's obviously working for this company on the border, the Mexican-US border, and they just walk off like this dead cool cinematic thing. And I thought, obviously, it must be a Reservoir Dogs homage, but I just thought that was proper cliched. I thought, I've seen this many a time in a film now.
And I guess it is just one of those stylized things, isn't it? So, you're trying to avoid CCTV cameras and everything, but hold on, lads, let's just get this really cool stylized shot. But equal spaces apart. Let's make sure we're there. So style over substance. You can't think too deeply about that one.
No. But it was good because it's like they're all bad. The badasses sort of thing.
Yeah,
I get it. It was good. It was just a very much a cliche thing, but it didn't distract from it because I just thought, I like that. I did like it. It just made me laugh because I thought we've seen this loads of times.
So then we get introduced to Max, don't we? So the mysterious voice over the radio.
Yeah,
and Max is he's trying to intimidate some scientists. And he wants to get his hands on something called snooks. So I don't think we know what these are at the time, but essentially we get a little bit of a, it's part supposed to be dramatic. But then it's a little bit comedic as well. So, the scientists are resisting what Max wants. And so he gives his henchman, Wade, there a little bit of a nod. And he just completely throws him off the building. But then we get what was that? I just wanted to rough him up a little bit. At most, that was break his finger nod. It was like, no, you gave me the nod to throw him off the building. So I quite enjoyed that bit.
But did you not hear, though, Dave, that obviously they throw him off the building. We have no concept of how high they are up, really. And then you hear like a scream and stuff at the bottom. But then he goes, you just threw him off a 57th floor building. I'm thinking, there's no way you'd hear a scream from that high up.
No.
But it was good. It was a good daft scene because you just knew one of them was going to get it. They were literally a throwaway character. You know what I mean? Because you knew something was going to happen to one of them. It's like the old classic thing. But yeah, and then the next bit is the testing out this sort of
the snook.
The snook, and he sort of implodes an island, doesn't he? And it's environmental friendly, apparently.
Yeah, so they called it, because I had to write it down, a sonic dematerializer. So it's not like a nuclear bomb where, you have all of the after effects of it. So that's why I was saying it's kind of environmentally friendly. So you completely destroy something, and then it doesn't leave behind a trace.
No, and I must admit, Dave, what I liked about this Max was, and obviously I was watching it thinking, that's definitely Jason Patric out of Speed 2. That's all I kept thinking all the way through, because it is obviously him. Yeah. I was waiting for Keanu to come out and go, there is a bomb on the bus, but it was to say, he was like the second one. But what I found interesting was, he had an American flag on his lapel of his suit. Because obviously in his mind, it's like he's doing the good for, the American country and the people.
CIA,
yeah. And then he's on the island after they've sort of imploded one of them. He gets on his helicopter, and then the girl, who's obviously a pretty girl, he's got an umbrella, which why you got an umbrella when it's like 40 odd degrees, I do not know. She just accidentally...
It's keeping out the sun, isn't it? Not the rain.
Well, yeah, true, yeah. She then gets...
We can edit that bit out if you want.
No, it's fine. But we've got the girl who has got the umbrella, and she sort of stumbles and says, "Oh, sorry," and then he just decides to just shoot in the head. And this is another sort of thing, as if to say, this Max is not somebody to be, messed with. And I thought that was not powerful, but I thought, yeah, it all fits in with who the guy is. He thinks he's doing something good, but if someone sort of makes a silly mistake, he's just going to kill him.
Yeah. So we get 3 kind of data points, don't we? We get that. He's just, although, he kind of acted like he didn't want his henchman to throw a bloke off the building, but essentially, he's thrown him off the building, and he didn't really, he wasn't particularly upset about it. So that's one. We get the fact that, the girl, she doesn't actually make a mistake. All that happens is a bit of wind blows the umbrella, but it takes it off him. So he shoots her in the face. And then the third thing, I think he says something like, he kind of likens selling these snooks on. It's like selling a handgun to a 6-year-old, and he just doesn't care what happens,
Yeah.
So all of this is to just tell us this is one ruthless baddie. You can't mess with him.
No, and I'd put the line down myself about selling a handgun to a 6-year-old. I thought that was quite a weird bit of dialogue. But yeah, again, it makes it for who he is. He's this menacing sort of egomaniac in his sort of maniacal, not a dictator, but he's obviously someone who's just got ideas of what he wants, and he's prepared to do anything to get it. So I did have a problem with him as a character. I like that sort of cool, wearing a suit sort of guy, but I don't know. It just he seemed a bit timid in some respects.
For me, and I think he has some interesting lines. I think I know what you're getting at, though. I didn't fully buy him as that ruthless character. I don't think.
Yeah. I wanted more. I think in some respects, the bits he did were good, but I wanted a bit more. Like he was prepared to get his hands dirty in some respects. You know what I mean? And so, that makes sense.
For me, it's some. Do you remember De Niro in Cape Fear?
Yes.
And he just oozed that kind of. You do not want to trifle with this bloke. This bloke will do whatever it takes. And I just didn't get that from this character.
No, he looked very much miscast. I'm glad you come to that conclusion as me, because I'm trying not to be overcritical with the reviews, but I like to look at different things in the plots and do I believe it? Because like you said, with someone who's believable as a baddie, it's toe curling where you're like, I want you to get your comeuppance.
Yeah.
And I just felt like he was hamming it up. And I have written in my notes, Dave, that I felt that some of it was very much, probably because it was fresh last week, but it was almost the Nick Fury type baddie. The Hydra sort of Viper.
Come on now. Maybe not. Maybe less excited though.
Yeah, I was going to
less excitable.
Yeah,
but
he didn't have a sequin on or anything like that. Sequin dress, but you understand what I mean. He hammed it up, I think.
Yeah.
But so I mean, he didn't detract from it, but yeah, I wasn't as sold on him as I was on his sort of right hand man at Wade. I thought he was believable as the sort of tough ex-commando guy.
Yeah, absolutely. But after we get to learn a bit about Max, we go to the chopper jacking, don't we?
Yeah.
So and I couldn't help, and it's interesting the arc of our particular reviews, but I couldn't help but think back to the Superman movie with this one.
Yeah.
With Miss Tessmacher, only Miss Tessmacher this time is Chris Evans.
Yeah. And then he says to obviously the army turn up, and he just says, he looks at it and goes, "Oh, hello." You know, like, he's like, you're supposed to be like critically ill here on the floor.
Yeah. And in the comics, so this scene is what the first issue opens up with, this chopper jacking scene. And Chris Evans' character Jensen, you know, he comes across in the comics a little bit Ryan Reynolds, you know. So a little bit kind of Wade Wilson. So before he became Deadpool, you know, that wisecracking smart aleck. So he's very much like that, isn't he? Where he's saying, you know, you lot are supposed to be dead. Stop talking to me. I'm a spinal victim. I can talk.
Yeah.
No, I thought Chris Evans did an okay job there. I do think Ryan Reynolds had possibly pulled it off a little bit better.
Yeah, and I must admit, Dave, it was like the origins of the Deadpool type humour. So whether sort of Ryan Reynolds had watched this with Chris Evans, and I'm not saying he's nicked the character because he hasn't, but I did think, obviously, Deadpool, he's ramped up to, you know, pure adult humour. There's total tongue-in-cheek innuendo all the way through Deadpool, but I did like Chris Evans through this. I thought he played this character really well, and when he needed to be funny, he was funny, you know, and sort of, it wasn't sort of where you're like cringing, thinking, oh no, he's trying too hard. I actually believed in what he was doing. I did like his sort of humour throughout the film. The tone was really good.
Yeah. No, I'll be honest, I do think he is just a great actor. So he probably, I think he's better than he gets credit for, to be honest. But yeah, so they obviously they get hold of the helicopter, don't they? And in that kind of A-team way, I guess they're not just killing everyone to get what they want. You know, they're trying to tranquilize people, you know, to take them down, and then they send the old black box in completely the opposite direction to where they're going, don't they?
Yeah, with like a bazooka type thing, isn't it, through the air. But then you get this sort of scene, which you get in most of these films, where they don't really trust her, and Alba, sort of Idris Alba's character, is it Rogue he's called, or Rock? It's spelled with a Q. Rogue. Yeah. Sorry, it's spelled with a Q. I could never get what they were saying with it, because you get Idris Elba's character, Rogue, and he doesn't trust her, and he pulls a gun on her. And I must admit, obviously later in the film we'll get into that, but the sort of, he's got like an undertone all the way through it, Idris Elba, anyway. He's sort of not happy with everything, but usually when they have these sort of characters, they come good.
Yeah.
The twist later on, but
so let's not talk about what happens later.
No, I'm not. But I just thought it was again, what I liked about the Idris Elba character was it was slightly against the norm. Usually, like I said to you, I could see what was going to happen at the start. I didn't see his character, and I thought it was good. I thought Idris Elba, as always, he always gives a solid 8 out of 10 at least. And he was
I mean, and to be honest, you can empathise with his character's position, can't you? Or the way he's acting like it is, because, you know, they've been put in this position, but then they're in this position, and Clay is hell-bent on going after Max.
Yeah.
Whereas you kind of get the impression from Rogue, he's like, look, let's just make the best of it. Let's just make new lives for ourselves. We'll stay off the grid. We don't have to go off on this revenge mission. Yeah.
And you can. I agree with that. I thought he was a good character all the way through it. And then from there, they go into the heist, which I thought had some great scenes, Dave. I thought the sniping was brilliant, the way it set up that whole scene. But again, I can't detract from the fact that Clay was just going pure Hannibal Smith here. He's just firing sort of grenade launchers, just firing them in the air randomly, but just like laughing like it's nothing. You know, the civilians. Then it was all played to the 1980s. I just thought it was brilliant. He was smiling and just sort of just nonchalantly just firing these things in the air. I thought it was great. I thought it was a really good. They get out that sort of rubbish 1970s car that was obviously in Wayne's World.
So we should probably say, so what they're trying to do here, isn't it? They're trying to they think Aisha's basically told them Max is in this security car, and so they've got the chopper to basically, with this giant magnet attached, to try and take it off somewhere, and then they'll capture Max, and then give him a good talking to. I'm sure have a few stern words with him, But then actually when in amongst that, when they're trying to do that, that's when they recognise Wade, isn't it? And so that's when we as the audience find out, these guys know each other, and they know their reputations and whatever. So this Wade chap isn't to be trifled with. No,
exactly. And he does have a little bit of fear into them, which you don't really see, a bit of vulnerability, because they're sort of thinking this guy's on the same level of us, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which is good, and that obviously does set up the goody v baddie sort of situation. You know that there's going to be at some point some sort of showdown, which I did enjoy this bit, and I must admit, the whole magnet on top of the sort of security van gag is very much like a Fast and Furious type thing, but this was done before the Fast and Furious stuff, so maybe they've stole it from them. But it's something that we've seen before, but I think it was pulled off quite well. I thought it was good little, this action sequence is good. I'm a sucker for these sort of scenes, and it's believable in my eyes.
Me too. Yeah, me too. It's just great, isn't it? And you get, little one-liners, bit of comedy in there. Pooch is having a bit of back and forth with Aisha in the helicopter. So, yeah, I love these as well. I mean, I thought you were going to say, it was stolen off, I don't know, Tom and Jerry or Roadrunner, something like that. Giant magnet picking up a car. So
no, there is a scene in the Cannonball Run 2, and I was going to drop it in there, but I didn't know whether because the Sheik in Cannonball Run 2's got all the money, and they get this helicopter with a grab thing at first to try and grab his Rolls Royce, and it doesn't work, and then they put a magnet on it, and they end up trying to get up, but obviously a Rolls Royce is about a ton, so they can't. It ends up with the helicopter going through a tunnel. But that's where I was going to say it, Dave, because it's one of my favourite films, the Cannonball Run series. I didn't think you get the reference.
I used to watch Cannonball Run all the time, but I honestly couldn't remember that. I'll have to watch it at some point.
Watch the second one, Dave. It'll be on YouTube when they try and get the Sheik's car. It's very reminiscent of that. But yeah, no, it's good. Yeah.
Good stuff. So they the heist all goes through, doesn't it? They get the security car, but Max isn't in there. They just have a hard drive, and so they have a bit of back and forth. Idris Elba is clearly not happy. I think none of them really trust Aisha. But then it's quite clear that even though it's not Max, this hard drive does have value, and Max really wants it. So they kind of discuss, how is it? They somehow find out. Oh no, that's it. So Jensen's he's like the computer whiz, isn't he?
Yeah.
And they can't crack it. So what they figure they need to do, if they get hold of the algorithm from the company that made the hard drive, they'll be able to crack it.
Yeah.
And so that's where they get to, and it's like, all right, okay, well let's go ahead and do this. And actually, the movie is a little bit like that, isn't it? It's like they have a plan. Plan doesn't come off. Right, let's replan. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
But that whole idea of breaking into that company, I think coming up now is probably my favourite bit in the whole movie. So this is when the Chris Evans / Wade Wilson type of character goes in, and he wants to get the elevator to himself. So he goes in as like a delivery guy with his headphones in, singing at the top of his lungs, like, don't stop believing.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It's really good.
There's a bunch of people waiting for the elevator, aren't there? And, it all goes to plan because they just wait for the next one. But as soon as the doors close, he goes up, and so he goes into action. He starts to get changed, and then we get the doors opening, and it's a bit of a Diet Coke moment, isn't it? I mean, there's not many women probably who would look away if Chris the doors opened on a half naked Chris Evans. And what's the line he says?
He says something like is it something like my
it's something like, are you liking the angle of the dangle?
the dangle. Yeah, the angle of the dangle. That's it. Yeah.
But anyway, the doors close, and then he goes back into action and getting changed again. So he then kind of changes into security guy gear and manages to get into the office. And so he'd rung the bloke who he's trying to get the algorithm off, one of the head cheeses, and said, someone's exposed themselves in the elevator or some terrible business. And so he goes off, and he's like, I need to put a security patch or something like that.
Yeah.
But typical heist stuff. It feels quite tense. Feels like he could get caught at any moment. And actually, there's a tiny bit that I actually love from this, because I think he likes to think he's this wise-cracking, smooth-talking bloke, but he quite often doesn't say quite the right thing. And he's saying to the secretary, "I love your dress." And then he walks in and he's like, what am I saying?
Yeah.
But then he sort of gets that, but then you have a bit of a chase on, don't you? So the security guards have got him at gunpoint. And again, this is a bit where you have to really suspend disbelief about how it came off. But for me, I can quite easily do that and just enjoy the scene. So it's like, they did some weird stuff to me, some experimental stuff, some anal stuff. And he's holding his double barrel fingers out there.
Yeah.
And of course you got, who's it, Cougar, who's a sniper at the back. And so he takes out a couple of the guards, but in perfect timing, Jensen's pretending to shoot them with his fingers. So the third guard decides, yep, I've had enough of this.
Yeah, and he does a bit of Clint as well, doesn't he? A bit of a Clint Eastwood impression.
Yeah.
He's good. But like I say, it was very much a watered down version of the Deadpool thing. The whole way it's slapstick, it's a massive thing he's doing, but it's just a joke to him. So
yeah.
I thought it was I agree with you. I thought it was a great scene when he was singing and everything. Because I actually put that down. I thought he's got a good voice here as well.
Yeah.
It was believable, though, Dave, and that's what you want out of these sort of things. I thought it was good. I think he was the best character in the film, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we get this thing now. They're all sort of, after they get back to the sort of base where they are, it comes out that there's $400 million on the hard drive, and they've worked out with the IP address that is Max's base, and they're going to go and have a look and sort of kill Max from there, aren't they?
Yeah. So this IP address keeps showing up, doesn't it? So that's it. It tracks the locations of where it's been, and so it keeps going back to this same IP address. So they kind of figure out, well, that must be where Max is based. And it must be an early Bitcoin or something like that, because the idea that you've got all this money actually physically on the hard drive seems a bit weird, but okay, we'll get past that.
And as a good friend of mine once said, if the plot needs it, we'll do it, and that's exactly what they did, because there was a few things at this point when I'm thinking, again, it was very much. Have you ever seen Prison Break, the TV series? It was very much like that, where
no.
Prison Breaks, if the first two series are absolutely fantastic, and some of the stuff in it, it's so far-fetched how the sort of coincidences and the way they stumble across things. It's like, there's no way. But this was like this. This was like, it's going to be in the plot, whether you think it's, you believe it or not. Well, that's like the story arc has to go that way. So
yeah.
It was good. It was good. And then we get the thing where we find out from the guys they're sort of giving a bit of home life that one of them's expecting a baby. Chris Evans is looking at his daughter's soccer team, and then it comes out that she's the daughter of the drug baron who Clay killed at the start. And they then rush off to try and sort of save Clay, which they duly do. And we get a bit of a... the only thing with this scene I thought was real funny was we get a bit of a John McClane scene. Is everything gets destroyed and there's glass everywhere. She ends up in the sort of bath. And Clay then storms into the bathroom with no shoes on or anything, but doesn't have a shard of glass on his feet. And I'm thinking, surely we've seen this in Die Hard. He's got to at least look down at his feet. But no. There was nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
it was just like
it was a bit John Wick sort of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was a good scene, but again, you know, she goes, and then you're thinking, all right, hang on a minute, it's a double cross from here, you know, which it was. I thought it was good because I thought it was a good little twist to the film. I thought he needed it at that point. He needed something else because it was all going down the usual action sort of film at that point.
Yeah. And just, I mean, old Jensen takes a bullet in the arm, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But I just love the way, I think it's the Petunias, isn't it? His niece's football or soccer team.
Yeah.
And he just seems just really unhealthily well into it.
Yeah,
they've got a great record. They're a great team, you know, and he's catching up on the internet how they're doing and stuff. I just thought, again, just silly little thing that stood out for me. It just made me laugh.
Yeah. I must admit, when I saw the picture, I thought they were adults or something. I didn't twig that it was his niece's, you know, team. But then he had a nice little sort of human side to it. The guy saying like she's pregnant. Now, I must admit there was no mention of it throughout the whole of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And then over an hour into the film, we get this sort of thing like I need to get back. So I did think that sort of stood out, but it was a nice human element to the team. They weren't just this absolute, you know, kicking butt commando team.
They've got stuff to lose, haven't they?
Yeah.
And they have lost, you know, they're stranded out there, or they have been off the grid, presumed dead. And, you know, Pooch has got a wife who's clearly heavily pregnant.
Yeah. And I think it would have had a bit more scope if it had been mentioned at the start in some respects, you know, because it's like he has everything to lose by sort of getting killed or getting, you know, injured.
I think that's a really good point, actually, because if when they were playing the card game and having a bit of a bet at the start, if we'd have found out then, we'd have gone through a bit of the movie knowing that he's got this at stake. Whereas actually, you know, they're already halfway through it, or over halfway through it, and then we find out it's like, oh, by the way, you know, he's got a heavily pregnant wife. No, I think that's a good point. I think maybe if they'd mentioned that at the start, that would have been a nice addition there.
But then again, I suppose, and I'm playing a double-edged sword here because I've obviously just dropped this in there. I agree with you. I do think it should have had a bit more. The human side of it maybe should have come in once the sort of the whole kids getting blown out the sky scenario happened. Maybe that's where we should have realised why they had to get back to the sort of US. There was no explanation of it until they were already in the US and they were fighting Max. So, but maybe they were doing it, I'm just thinking double-edged sword, not to try and be a cliche action film, but I don't know, maybe because we're just used to that sort of thing where these, you know, they've all got something to lose and all this sort of thing. It might have run a bit better in sequence of the film, really.
Yeah.
Just as I'm thinking out loud. I'm not saying I'm right, just as I'm thinking out loud, really.
Yep. So obviously the issue with finding out Aisha, she's the daughter of this drug lord that Clay's killed off. She knows all the plans. So and they pretty much they'd given each other knowing nods, hadn't they? I think they all thought this was a suicide mission. Yeah, to go out and take Max, but they're kind of all in with it. But obviously, with Aisha knowing the plans, they don't really know what her agenda is. So, you know, they have to discuss, are they still going to go through with it? And in the end, they decide to go through with it. Now, Chris Evans has taken a bullet to the arm, or Jensen's taken a bullet to the arm, but it doesn't seem to slow him down that much as he's, you know, steaming up a ladder there. But they try and go through with the mission, but very quickly they're caught, and that's when we find out, isn't there, that there's been a double cross, that Roke, Idris Elba's character, has sold them out essentially.
Yeah, and I didn't see it coming at all, and it was sort of built up, but usually in these films, the obvious one, you think he's going to double cross him. It isn't them, but it was the obvious one in this. But I didn't think he was going to double cross him. I sort of had a sniff of it when they were having that bit of a set to him in Clay in one of the earlier scenes, and they'd had to be separated. But usually, one of them saves the other one, and it's all sort of reconciled. But this literally
he's got a heart of gold, gruff exterior, and nope, he's just a bad man.
But again, it was a good little twist for me, and I didn't really have much of an issue with it. I thought it sat well with the whole them getting caught, because at this point they're pretty much Teflon, aren't they? Nothing's sticking to them, and they just seem to be evading every single person. So and this is what I kind of enjoy about movies like this, because even though the goodies are going to win at the end of the day, or we think they are, it did feel like there was something at stake. So the goodies would probably win at the end. Maybe not a clean win, but they were going to win at the end. But there was going to be consequences. And when, they're all being lined up, you're just thinking, they're stuffed. How are they going to get out of this one? And then, of course, Pooch in particular gets shot in both legs, doesn't he? And you're thinking, this could be curtains. You're not all getting through this one. And then Aisha then turns up, doesn't she, with a massive rocket launcher. But, Dave, I have a massive issue with that scene. I must admit, it's the only one. The CGI is awful. Because she's floating above she's not actually, if you look at her feet, she's actually floating where they've superimposed her on it. Because,
really?
Yeah, you can see.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that.
It looks terrible, but honestly, you're like, it's great that she's come back to save them, but it was like, oh no, what he's got.
So I have a slightly different issue and I'll have to go back and look at that again. That if the CGI is not very good, I had more of an issue about where was she pointing that rocket launcher.
I don't know.
She appears there, and everyone's like, oh great, she's come to save us. And she fires a rocket launcher just into the middle of this shipping yard. Now, fortunately, all their training kicks in and everything, and they spring into action, and they end up getting free. But if it was you and I, you'd be like, "What was that all about?"
Well,
what were you doing? We're over here. What are you sitting over there for?
I tell you what. Like these random things just appear in film. Do you know that something at the side that sort of gets mentioned briefly is going to be part of the film in some point? Was they've just literally before this scene, you've got these businessmen who they're going to do Max's double crossing with Wade, and they've got these sort of this machine, these this advanced technology stuff, and he's trying to arm them, the guy, and they force him and say, "Look, we're taking the money, and there's just a Ducati bike there. And I'm looking at it thinking, well, it's pretty obvious someone's getting away on that bike. Did you not pick up on that? Because it was just in the crate with these sort of bits of technology, like these warhead things or whatever they are.
Right.
I'm thinking...
Convenient. Like last week in Nick Fury, let them know that we have the escape helicopter ready. Here we got... I'm not going to do it, but Max was doing the old Indian accent, wasn't he?
Yeah.
We've changed the plan or something. To the edge there.
Yeah, exactly. It was just one of them things, because obviously later on the bike's not even in the crate; it's parked up somewhere else. Because I'm going a bit ahead now, because obviously Aisha's done this thing where she's bluffing up. Then she comes with the losers, what's left of them, and there's a bit of a standoff, and she takes 3 of the baddies out, and that's it. Then they're all one big team together, aren't they? And they go on this sort of 4-man mission of just 5, that's including her, of just taking everyone out as you would expect.
And again, in amongst all of this this danger, again, sort of. Jensen's still giving out the little quips, isn't it?
Yeah.
A stupid little thing about, this bloke's, so Pooch has had both his legs, shot out. And he's like, come on, legless Pooch.
Yeah.
Sticks him over his back and he's like, if you call me legless Pooch, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
It makes you sound like a pirate.
I must admit though, Dave, I'd tell you what I did think was funny. The whole thing about that was that he was underused, this guy Pooch, as well, was when about 3 of them kept saying, can you stand up? And he's like, I've been shot in both my legs, you know what I mean? Yeah. But he says that. Ask me again. But then obviously Clay puts a couple of bandages around his leg, and then the next scene he's running. And then
like Carl Lewis, isn't he?
Yeah, then he's
sprinting off there, a couple of bandages, that sorts bullet wounds right out.
There was no continuity, because then I think the scene straight after he's like, oh no, my legs, just like, come on. But
I know I'd be rubbing my legs if I was able to run that quick. It was a little bit. Yeah, it's like, say, Jensen got his arm shot earlier and then, seemed to have no problem with it. But again, I think it's just that, again, we'll use the A-Team comparison, just a little bit like that. The bullet wounds are just like minor grazes. It's like falling over and grazing your elbow.
And I must admit, the next bit was pure A-Team. They've got this van, which obviously got Dorian the Exterminator on, which I must admit I forgot to look online to see if that was an Easter egg, because I didn't know if that was just homage to something within the comics or whatever. And they then go at sort of Wade and these sort of commando guys, soldiers, and the van gets blown up, but no bullets go through and hurt any of them, and all they do is do an A-Team special and take the tyres out, which they then burst out the back of the van. Just like the A-Team, and I'm thinking, I'm just waiting for Mr. T to turn up now at this point. But there's a line, Dave, obviously Clay goes after Roker at this time, in the plane, and there's a line by Max which I was absolutely crying at this point, because we get this scene where Clay goes after the plane, but Max then realises he's got to get out of there, and he just goes, right, let's initiate plan C. So I'm thinking, hang on, what's happened to A and B? And he just randomly says it, and I'm thinking, this is definitely in the Nick Fury territory of dialogue. It just didn't make any sense at all. And then he decides to climb up this container, lift, like the container things out there, and he just decides to go upwards. And I'm thinking, why are you going upwards?
Yeah, what's your plan?
I thought the fight scene was good with Idris Elba, obviously Roke and Clay, but the thing with the sniping was brilliant, because obviously they have a fight. I don't know if you want to say anything about it, but I just thought the fact that the plane didn't go anywhere near Clay, I was thinking that is pure comic book at that point. I had to see like that bit. I thought it was really, really, really over the top.
So essentially we get the John Virgo trick shot of the year, don't we? So Clay is stood in the middle. So you've got let me think of the scene now. So Roke, he's trying to steal the money, isn't he? So he's trying to double cross Max and run off with all the money. So on the plane, Wade gets wind of this, and he's like, he's trying to run off with all the money. So in one direction, you've got Roke trying to get away with the plane. In the other direction, you've got Wade steaming towards the plane to try and stop him taking off. And in the middle, you've got cool as a cucumber Clay just stood there, kind of taking in some of the scenery and whatever, just not moving at all. But then, unbeknownst to us, we've got Cougar, who's that crack shot sniper. And so he takes out Wade on the bike, but he takes him out at such an angle that he manages to spin. And this is where the John Virgo thing comes in, because he manages to spin Wade right into the aeroplane propellers.
Yeah.
So he's toast. He's gone, and then he managed to get the bike to go over Clay's head and right into the cockpit of the plane.
Yeah, and you know what, Dave? I'm watching this scene now. There's no way that plane could have took off. It literally had about 200 yards.
It was going about 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, there's no way that plane could have gone off. I'm just literally at that scene now, and it's like exactly. And all Clay needed on was the old No Dad waistcoat, John Virgo special, because there's no way that I don't know. He must be a mathematician genius to understand the trajectory stuff.
He needed to do the Luke Skywalker, the Mark Hamill thing where he
over the shoulder
brushes a bit of dust off his shoulder. That would have just topped this off for me.
well, I think the thing he was pretty poor then though as well. The CGI again comes into question because there's a scene where it shows the plane from the back and Clay's obviously in front and it just looks terrible. And I'm thinking, this is TV movie style at the end. I really was sort of questioning what was going on. I thought that ruined it, but then obviously we get Clay going after Max and they collide. So this is where the plan C bit comes in. Apologies, David. He's on the phone to someone. This is plan C. But why he's going up, there is no reason or a reasonable explanation for this at this point. Why he's going up into this sort of lift. I haven't got a clue.
What it is, you've got the Starship Enterprise. They can only beam him off that particular point. So that's the only way I can rationalise it. Because, like you say, what is the plan there?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense at all. But then he's got this sting in his hand, and it's going to set off. If you leave it for 10 seconds, and I must admit, Clay then becomes some sort of diving phenomenon because he can actually catch up. The human body can catch up to an object. So
this. And there's beats of A-Team all the way through this, isn't there? And there is a certain amount where I can suspend disbelief. Like I say, with a lot of things like this, I just strap myself in. I just go with it.
Yeah.
But this, leading up to that bit, so, again, you're thinking, Max, he sort of lays the law down, doesn't he? He's got a remote pressure trigger. So, you can't do anything. No, so Clay shoots him anyway.
Yeah.
Just to say, I'm still not messing around here. And then Max throws it off the edge of this pier kind of thing where, Clay has to dive in. And again, gravity, doesn't matter how heavy you are, it still pulls down at the same pace. So
yeah.
I had a big problem with this.
I did. I've written it down here.
Yeah, just the idea. So, even if you're a second behind when that tiny little object hits the water, there's just no way you would be able to get your hands on that.
No.
And so again, I kind of... does it make a bit of drama? Well, maybe, but I must admit, just a logical part of my mind, it wouldn't accept this bit.
And then, I know he wouldn't, and then Clay gets out of the water and he puts a bit of masking tape around this thing, this detonator, but surely where he comes out is where he's just jumped off. That Max is above him because the helicopter's gone, who Clay shot at. They then turn up...
He's probably halfway to China by the time he gets out.
In the Nick Fury, the Viper, escape pod. Yeah. But they just turn up in this just yellow limousine Hummer from nowhere. Look what we found. There's no reference to it at all in any of the film. There's no sort of picture of it in shot at all with Max or anything to say this is his escape vehicle. And one thing with Max, Dave, and I think this may have been set up if they were ever going to do a second, which they never have, was what they said is in the comics. I don't know if you picked up on this, but in the film, Max has got different colour gloves on his left hand, right? And because they tried to signify that there was a thing where they were going to use the comic book analogy of him, and that what it was they were twins. So in some scenes he's got a black glove on, in other scenes he's got a white glove on, and this is where this thing was going to come in. I think if they were going to do a sequel, that there was actually two of them all along, but we wouldn't have seen it. But that's why there's certain scenes I could see it now on some research, watching the film again. But then I must admit, like Clay gets off, they go into this Hummer, and just before he goes in, he rings Max. Now, Max is obviously this maniacal psycho. He's just killed a couple of people at will all the way through the film. And two Hispanic gangbangers can just go on to him because he's now on a bus. And Clay's like, I know your face. And they just mug him. It's just made no sense at all to me.
Yeah, and actually, and this wasn't an intentional comparison, but I'll go back to it now. So when I talked about Robert De Niro in Cape Fear, there's a bit in that movie where Nick Nolte tries to get some guys to rough him up.
Yeah,
and again, physically, these are equivalent guys, but Robert De Niro is just an absolute psycho, and he proves it, and so in a real menacing villain, I guess I'm looking for that kind of character. Whereas a couple of thugs come up, and I do like his reaction though. It's just like, that's a nice watch, take it. I'm not even gonna. I don't have my muscle around me. Just go ahead and take it.
Yeah.
But it didn't really. Again, I hadn't all the way through the film. I hadn't really been buying him as this absolutely ruthless villain, and again, that I'm with you. I didn't like that bit at the end. It's just like it's only the power and the position that he's in that makes him that ruthless. But without it, he's nothing.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was to say like he's a broken man or whatever, because it left it open, set up for a sequel, which I think they were probably hoping for, weren't they? Which didn't obviously happen. But I don't know. I'm with you on that. It just didn't settle well with me at the end, considering everything we'd been through with this character. It just was just a weird little sequence, and I don't get it.
Yeah, and I say, it's funny how our reviews they link back to each other in weird ways, but it did feel a little bit like that ending for Nick Fury, where they're escaping at 1 inch per hour, and then Hasselhoff says they're probably halfway to China by now. Like you say, if Clay's diving off that pier, he gets that pressure trigger. Well, surely he just has to look up. Max couldn't have got that far away. No, in that time. So it's like, look, he's right there. Everyone else who isn't in the water, get him. He's right there.
Yeah, exactly. It was just bizarre again. But I don't know whether it's because we've started reviewing films for what they are and looking at different things. But I probably wouldn't have noticed that, and just gone, all right, fair enough, he's got away. But it's the fact that he's hightailed it and out of this shipping dock, and there's no way there's going to be a bus round there, but he's got on one. And it's just I don't know whether that was a bit of a thing. I mean, it wouldn't have been Speed, because in Speed 2 he was on a boat, but I don't know. I kept thinking, is this some homage to Speed with the first one? I just didn't. There was just some weird things at the end. It seems like they were trying to end it.
Maybe after that experience, he just really hates buses.
I don't know, but I must admit, they seem to tie things up pretty badly at the end of this film.
Well, I mean, then we get into, it's straight into what looks like another mission, isn't it? But you're kind of thinking, hang about, we've just been through the third act. What's all this about? And actually what they're doing. So they're still on the run from the law.
Yeah.
But they need to kind of smuggle Pooch in to see his wife who's in labour. And I must admit, so I've been with my wife through labour a few times, and I have to say, if I'd have turned up after being missing for months, I don't think I'd have quite got the same reaction that Pooch did.
No, and she didn't seem that obviously her makeup was absolutely perfect. She was smiling at this point in labour.
She's like, oh, you cheeky old scamp, where have you been?
Yeah, where have you been? Yeah.
Whenever I've been there, and I haven't been missing for months and months, it's more like, where's the priest?
Yeah, I hate
the power of Christ.
Hey, Dave, I'll tell you a story, and it's obviously for the podcast. Jordan's 17 now, but when she was born, and obviously I've only got Jordan, when Sam was in labour, I couldn't stay with her the night before. I had to go to the hospital, and they were like, right, you'll have to go. And I was like, no, she's in labour. And like, no, it's Braxton Hicks. Anyway, she was in labour. I got there 50 minutes before she had Jordan, because they only rang me 50 minutes before, and she'd been saying all night, and Sam absolutely caned me, scratches, punches, everything. So the fact that she was she was nonchalantly just passing it off like it was nothing, and she'd gone through the heartache of him being dead, which we see at the start of the film, that she obviously goes to like his sort of to get his dog tags and stuff. It just made no sense. And so I was like, oh, there you are. Hi. Yeah.
Like, you cheeky old scamp, you. Yeah, and again, there's probably two bits in the movie that I just couldn't swallow. One was Clay jumping off to get that pressure trigger, and the second one was this. And I guess, you know, if you're 14, 15-year-old kid, you're not even... It's not going to come up on your radar, is it? But
no,
you know, as a parent, it just I just couldn't swallow it.
No,
I just wasn't expecting that reaction there, and it's like, you know, just they didn't even have to put that in the movie, you know, particularly really.
I knew that's what the scene was, Dave. To be fair, so he's cut across you. As soon as the credits come on and it come to that, I thought he's going to the hospital. I just knew it because of what I mentioned earlier, but. Again, it was to try and show this human side to him on it as well, I think, even at the end. But I'm with you, was it necessary? Probably not. The soccer game one, I probably would have had him more than the child, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I mean, again, just a little bit of fun, wasn't it? And you know, we'd seen hints of it earlier that Jensen was really into his niece's soccer team. And it's funny. So last week on the other podcast, on the Grassroots podcast, we were talking about kind of managing parents and you know, having shouty parents on the sidelines.
I'm not up to that bit. I've been listening to it and I'm not up to that bit.
He did a brilliant impression of, you know, some of the worst things there, but you know, he's supporting that team and obviously having a standoff with the referee as they get dragged away again. So that bit I did like, just a nice fun kind of ending to the movie.
Yeah. And it ended well, and I think they thought there was going to be a sequel, and obviously we know now there wasn't. But you know, I just thought the last maybe 15 minutes it was real let down with some real. It's just like they rushed the end of it, I think. So are we going into the review section then, Dave?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Well, obviously after last week, you went first for your review, Dave, and I think it's only right that I should go first this week out of respect and keep this sort of same flow and structure. Now, when I reviewed it, and I actually only watched it today because of work and stuff, I gave it a certain score. And now that I've been talking about it and going through it, I can't give it the score I was going to do. I thought Jason Patric was totally miscast as Max. It was just a real hammy. Like I said before, I know we're joking about, but it's a Nick Fury type TV. He was like a baddie out of a TV film, I think. And that sort of, I lost a bit of what he was doing at some point. I understand this sort of killing the woman holding the umbrella and the different things where he just randomly was shooting people. But like we were just saying a couple of minutes ago, it just didn't sit well at the end how he just give up his watch like it was nothing, like he was a broken man. And I don't think it betrayed it very well. And he's quite a wooden actor anyway. I think it just he just sort of took me away from what they were. But I did like, as a massive A-Team fan, and I've got A-Team DVDs, I can see them. I've got like the old A-Team stuff. I did like that sort of commando on the run, trying to clear the name thing. It's a cliche. It's a formula that's been done loads of times, but it just works. And I thought Idris Elba was good. Chris Evans, Jeffrey Morgan, he was really good in it. And I just thought it was good. It was really good as a film. But for me, it can't be like I gave the Black Panther Halls of Justice, and I can't give it a Halls of Justice because I just don't think it's on that level for what it was. It's a great comic book film, and I don't want people thinking that the score I'm going to give is not something that you can't watch, because it's an hour and a half of fun and just daft, over the top comic book drama. I just didn't feel it was right to give it the same score as I've given the Black Panther, because it just isn't, and it's not on that level. And I know it's 8 years ago, the film, but there was just too many little things sort of took me away from the action in some points. But the action sequences are brilliant. So don't, if anyone out there is listening, wherever you are in the world, please watch it, but just take it for what it is. So for that reason, I'm going to send it to the Hell's Kitchen.
So I remember watching this movie, not at the cinema, but probably quite soon after it came out on DVD, and I remember quite enjoying it. And like you, I love the A-Team. I just absolutely swallowed that up when I was a kid watching that, and those same kind of themes, but in a more kind of mature way. It's a bit more mature than the A-Team was. I remembered really enjoying it. On this rewatch, and it is a great cast, and there's some of the shots are quite nice as well, and I did enjoy it as well. But I was umming and ahhing between a Hell's Kitchen and a Halls of Justice as well, because I just thought, actually, on rewatching it, and again, there's certain things I just can't. I can suspend disbelief so much, but there were just too many things there. And what was the line from Kingsman about Bond movies? It was something like, the movie's only as good as the villain.
Yeah. And
for this one, the villain just wasn't very good. Like I say, great cast. I hope they do well with their careers. But, and like I say, the Chris Evans singing in the elevator or up to the elevator, absolutely love that scene. But for me, it's a Hell's Kitchen as well.
Yeah.
And I think before the rewatch, I was going into this thinking it would be either a Hall of Justice or an Atlantis, but no, on that rewatch, it just didn't live up to what I remembered.
Yeah, and I think as well, Dave, like there's some films that stand out that we've reviewed already. Obviously, The Kingsman has got the Asgard treatment, and in our opinion, quite rightly. But I think what it is what's a good thing though, watching these comic book based films, is how far they've come. Even in 8 years, like we go back to, obviously there's certain films like The Matrix and that, fantastic films. We talked about Blade. It's something we're going to review at some point. And they were around the same time as what was going on with the Hoff here in Nick Fury. And then you've got this in 2010. But I think as well, it's how the writers and the director perceives a comic book. And you can tell the difference between, I think even in this short space of time that we've been reviewing, in the 6 reviews we've done, that you can tell when a director gets it. Yes, there's a budget, and yes, that does make a difference, but you can just tell that there's certain things there that people just get it. And in some respects in this, they skipped a beat and missed a beat in certain things. And I think that's why there's so much right in this film, but again, it's just let down with some real obvious plot holes and miscasting. And I think, like with the Hoff, it was just unbelievable what a difference. You wouldn't even think that was only 20 years ago. It was that, and I'm not going back to that because it was last week's review, but I just mean in comparison to this was like something it was on the verge of being a great film, and it was just let down with someone's direction or sort of writing just seemed to let it down, which is a shame really, but I really recommend to people to watch it because it is a fun film to watch.
Yeah. And it does seem, we talk about a kind of linear scale, but I think it's not quite linear, is it? Because if you were to analytically look at the losers, versus Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, I look at my own scores. I've actually judged them the same.
Yeah.
But, you know, you'd have to say The Losers is a much better movie. But for me, just in terms of that enjoyment, I couldn't see me rewatching The Losers again. Whereas just for just over the top silliness, I think I would go back at some point and watch Nick Fury again. So, you know, it's not a linear thing. It's all subjective, but interesting that we came out with the same score there.
Yeah, and look, I really enjoy the way we're doing this as well, because I just think when people are listening to it and we're getting sort of questions, and you've had a couple of things, and it was your father-in-law, wasn't it, had corrected us on, what did he correct us on, Dave, when we were talking?
I'm glad you should. I should have said that at the beginning, shouldn't I? So the one thing was the education on I think I'd said Oxford's before Bros, and I think you had said Brogues.
Yeah,
but I, being a heathen, I completely missed that. So apparently, so father-in-law educated me. So the Oxfords are the kind of plain shoes, and those are the ones you real high-class gentlemen wear.
Yeah.
Whereas the Brogues, the more kind of patterned shoes, sort of the lower classes wear those. So, you know, you may be a bit perceived as a bit of a rebel, you know, if you're in certain circles and you've got Brogues. So it's got to be Oxfords, not Brogues. So I thought that was quite interesting. And the second one he said was the umbrella most likely came as an influence from the Avengers. Yeah. You know, the old not obviously Chris Evans, Captain America Avengers, but the old 60s British Avengers there. So
Joanna Lumley and stuff. Is it Patrick?
Joanna Lumley was one of them. Yeah.
Patrick, Connor Blackman.
One. So yeah, I thought that was interesting, and actually, you know, he's usually a bit further ahead of me on the curve in terms of comics knowledge as well. So, you know, he. I remember we were at a Comic Con and bringing all these things together. So it was actually Kapow Comic Con, which was set up by Mark Millar.
Yeah,
and you know, he was after the signature for Jock.
Yeah,
who's obviously the artist for what we've been reviewing today. So it all comes around. I'd never heard of him at that point.
No, I didn't. And I must admit, when I saw Jock, I thought I'd missed something. I thought he'd missed his second name off or something when I was researching it. But
he's like Brazilian. He's like Pele or Ronaldo.
Jock.
He's just Jock.
But no, and you know, what a good film again, with a different environment, a different setting. Yes, like you said, it's under the DC banner as such, but it's Vertigo Comics, and it's an adaptation of a story. And that's the good thing about it being comic book based, Dave. There's such scope on what we can review. And I'm glad we reviewed this, because I'd never seen it. And I'm like the fact that I've never seen it, so I'm not going into it knowing what's really going on. Yeah,
and again, what we'll try and do is we'll try and keep it broad. So, you know, we'll no doubt pick up the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We haven't even touched Batman's yet, have we? So
no.
Oh, no. Can't wait to get to George Clooney's Batman.
Oh, no. I went to the cinema to watch that.
Oh, man, that must be a life-changing experience.
It's just, I mentioned it to you, didn't I? The Mr. Freeze bit with Arnie, it was just horrendous. And it was just, Chris O'Donnell was Robin, wasn't he? And you had Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl. And it was just, that whole scene was just like I said last week, it was like the Mr. Freeze bit in Fury, and that scene with Arnie synonymous now as a terrible Batman film and scene, because Bane's in that one, and it's just awful. It's absolutely awful. But that, again, that'll be another classic, I think. I think we'll have more laughs than we will actually watching it. It's just weird.
I hope so. That's one that I'm not particularly looking forward to. But yeah, we'll try and We'll need to start working our way through those, but we'll try and make sure we pick some of these properties that maybe people don't know much about the comic book background as well.
Yeah, and one of the things I won't mind dropping in, Dave, if you don't mind, is we're looking at doing our first Netflix series in the next couple of episodes, where we'll review the whole series in one episode. And it won't be, we were laughing about this saying it's going to be a 24-hour podcast. Obviously, we're reviewing some of the films. They can be
Sponsored.
You what, mate?
Sponsored,
yeah, sponsored.
Set up a Patreon page.
Yeah, Patreon page, so you can sit through it. We'll probably need it, a lot of Red Bull and stuff. But we've decided to do it, and we're just going to use the same format as the film. So it's going to be probably even more broader, where we may just pick out certain plots within there, but we're trying to just get the fine details down on that, because it's going to be a challenge, obviously, to watch a series for an episode. We're just sort of starting tentatively to watch them in the background as we build up to sort of one of the podcasts. So if there's any series that you want us to review or look into in Netflix, whether it's just for your own thing before you watch it, is, get in touch with us, because we're just trying to fine tune how the reviewing goes, especially with a series, because with the Marvel and DC universe, there's so many of them out there now.
Yeah, absolutely, and probably more than we can catch up with. So, because there's things again, so probably things like the Inhumans. Not particularly looking forward to having to do that one, but we will do it at some point, I'm sure. And we've got the Runaways that's come out. We've got Cloak and Dagger coming up as well. There's tons of movies coming out this year. We talked about Avengers Infinity War. I was quite happy, actually. I saw that there were some good screen reviews for Deadpool 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all the noises that were coming out was that, the test screenings hadn't gone that well. So, there's going to be plenty to keep us busy. And so, if you're out there and listening and want us to do a particular property, then just give us a shout, and we'll try and, if it's not in our next few episodes, we'll discuss if we can bump that up.
Exactly. And then obviously me and Dave are looking to expand what we do. We've sort of discussed maybe getting on a guest reviewer with us, but we're not sure how that format would go, because we have been asked by a few people about coming on and doing a bit of a guest spot, but we're not sure how that would work, and obviously time wise what it offers as well. So we're going to, we're not that we're not open to it, but we just want it to be structured in the right way for everyone who's listening, because people seem to like the way we review these at the moment, obviously the films, but when we expand on some other things like the TV and games, we just want to get a rhythm going, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, have you got any plugs for us?
I have indeed, my good friend. As always, we have my other podcast, the Contextual Podcast, where we have various guests on from different mediums. I even had Steve-O back on this week, who is part of the actual intro, but decides to come on when he feels like it. But that was a good episode.
Is Steve-O a special guest, or
he just does what he wants. He's in the intro. I think he's just getting an intro for everyone who comes onto the podcast now. And then
that'll be a long intro.
I had Steve-O on. We're just talking gaming this week, WWE, UFC, and then on episode 39, I went slightly outside the box of what I normally do, and I had a guy on called Steve from Las Vegas, UK, who runs a Las Vegas tourism information site, and as someone who loves Vegas like yourself, Dave, it was a really good episode. If you get a chance, actually, Dave, have a listen. It was good, because really all I did was use him for tips and tricks for when I go to Vegas, because his knowledge was outstanding, and Steve's going to Vegas just after Easter, so he's going to come on and give us his full trip review, and I'm going to have him on quite regular now, because I've got a few of the guys who go Vegas, and me and Dave have been talking off air that we will be looking at doing a Comic Con at some point in San Diego, and then
absolutely, we'll get across to San Diego, and then we'll hop across to Vegas, and it's one of those Marmite places, isn't it? I know plenty of people who, it's not cultured enough. There's no history there. Obviously, it's just an artificial place created in the desert. But honestly, I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely. I mean, how many times have you been there, Dave?
I'm not sure. It must be on the order of 5. Because I've been there a few times with like work conferences and stuff.
Oh, that's amazing. I'd love my work to send me there as a conference. Best thing. I've only been twice.
It sounds like jolly. The thing you've got at Vegas is you've got massive hotels, you've got loads of conference facilities and what have you. So it does make sense on some respect to have it there.
Yeah.
But, in the night time, everyone sort of disappears down the casinos,
Exactly. It's a good team building exercise.
Exactly.
That's my scope on it anyway. But what about yourself, Dave? Sorry, before I pass you over to your plugs, you can contact me at the Contextual Pod 1 on Twitter or at Contextual Podcast. And if you want to email into me, it's the contextualpodcast@gmail.com. And then over to Mr. Dave Horrocks with his selfless plugs.
Yeah, so if you'd like to, like Jensen in the Losers, get involved with the youth soccer coaching, or youth football coaching, so head on over to the Grassroots Coach Cast. So we discuss all things around coaching at that kind of grassroots and really youth level. So I'm not quite sure what we're going to do in our next episode yet. We've got a couple of candidates, but we'll figure that one out on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. And Dave, your podcast is good. I'm on the latest one actually, and I'm literally up to the section you mentioned before about the parents, how you deal with parents. So I'm going to listen to that tomorrow because I like the way it's delivered with you and Ben.
Yeah, and so we need to get you on at some point. We spoke about doing it from that parent's perspective, didn't we? And obviously your experience with Jordan playing at that level. So we need to sort that out in the next couple of weeks, actually.
Yeah, I'll come on. You know me, I like talking about anything.
You're the podcast king, aren't you? So you're on every night. So we do, the trick is going to be catching you on a night when you're not doing another podcast.
Well, anyone who's listening, it's become a bit of an in-joke where Steve-O said the other day before we did the podcast, I told Dave this, we were laughing. Like this week, I've done a podcast on Sunday night. I've done 2 on Monday, and obviously we record this in the week just before it goes live at the weekend, and we're recording again. So I've done like 4 podcasts in the space for about 4 days. And then Steve said to me, him and his mate were listening, and my dad has got a podcast now called the Benidorm Chat Podcast, and he's only done 1 episode, like an intro, because there's travel agents around Alicante, Benidorm area. There's another plug, Dave. And he said they were calling me Gary Neville because they were listening to my dad's podcast, and then at the end, my dad had forgot to put his Gmail account in. Well, I produce it, put the music, the intro in and everything, and there's me popping up at the end, and you can contact us on benidormchatpodcast@gmail.com. And they were absolutely in stitches because they were like, he's just like Gary Neville. He said he's got his finger in every single podcast pie, and he said it's unbelievable.
Well, better than Jamie Carragher. You get a little bit of 4D effect, a bit of spray coming out of the laptop.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I do like the podcast format, Dave. So if you do hear my voice on anything that you listen to, it probably will be me because I'll just go on anything and talk.
I'll have to listen back to my Grassroots ones. You probably pop up at the end there, don't you? Everything. I don't remember doing that.
Hiya, Ben. Have you got any plugs? And Chris, have you got any plugs? Yeah, I've infiltrated them.
Sexual podcast.
I'm everywhere, Dave. That's the problem. The thing is, I'm everywhere. And like I do things, but Sam kills me because I'm saying to her, I've got another podcast today. And I'm just like, I'm going to get slapped at some point.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
You'll have to do like Pooch and disappear for 10 months. Well, I guess it can't be 10 months, can it?
No, and then just come back.
6 months, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely. But no, Dave, it's been a great podcast again. And what a great film that you chose this film because I'd never heard of it, David. I think it was because the A-Team was out. I've got the A-Team on Blu-ray here because I loved it so much, and I think that's probably why it passed me by. I remember seeing Chris Evans with his hair and the glasses and the little, because he reminded me of Shaggy off Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, with the little
I've never seen it, so I'm glad that you've introduced me to it. But it is what it is. The reviews are out there. So I'd like to see people's opinions on what our reviews and how they perceive what they listen to. You know, is it the same as theirs if they've rewatched the film or whatever?
I mean, we could always... Maybe when we put our reviews out, we'll stick a poll out as well. So we can have... we'll have the followers give their own reviews. Yeah,
good idea. That could be one for this week or next week when we've done this. Yeah, good
Let's
idea.
give it a go. Yeah. If one person responds, like you, then we probably won't do it again.
Yeah. If I just review my review again.
Hell's Kitchen. All right, well, that was an interesting experiment, wasn't it? Let's not bother doing that again.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for all your input. Yeah. So are we wrapping it up, Dave? I'll let you lead us out.
No, it sounds good. So thanks for listening to the Comics in Motion podcast. If you like what you hear, go ahead and head over to iTunes or Stitcher or your podcast catcher of choice and hit that subscribe button. That'd be fantastic. And also, while you're there, just if you want to go ahead and give us a review, what that does is that really helps the podcast grow. It helps other people find the podcast. I don't quite know how it all works, but apparently it's all in the algorithms. So it just helps us. It helps bump us up those search results. Exactly. So thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure, Chris. Been fantastic again. It's having a lot of fun doing these reviews, and we'll catch you next week.
And also, we will catch you next week. You can contact us at the Comics in Motion podcast at gmail.com, because the Comics in Motion people who were actually promoted last week, that isn't our email. So we did mention it. So, and also we're available on Twitter at Comics in Motion P. So you'll see us around and just give us a follow or any questions. But yeah, Dave, thank you for this week, and thanks everybody again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys. Take care now.
Good times.
I'm sorry I hit you in the face. I'm sorry I didn't mean to cut your head off.
Should you feel so much better?
No.
Are you sure you've done this before?
Okay, right now, not the time.
Liking the angle of the dangle?
In a smoky room, smell of wine and cheap perfume. For a smile they can share the night. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the